Okay. Okay. So, um, can you hear me okay?
I can.
So last time we discussed, we finished off discussing whether Abraham should be regarded as a monster or a righteous man for, oh, let me just take the dog collars off. Yeah. Sorry. Uh, for willing to, or for attempting to slaughter Isaac. Um, and I don't know if you remember, you kind of, I mean, I was kind of pressing you, and you were saying, on the one hand, of course, God is just, and therefore God's demands are just. But on the other hand, this is our conscience clearly indicates the other way, and so it must not be God. I mean, something is off here. Yeah, either we misunderstand God, or this isn't God, or so this question boils down to who knows better what is right and what is wrong. Okay? My conscience or God? And let's eliminate the possibility that maybe I'm understanding God incorrectly. But put the problem in its starkest form, where God, who is clearly God, is telling you something explicitly and it's clear, but it violates your conscience. So the question is, when God tells you one thing and your conscience tells you another, which should prevail? Okay, so and it's again, we won't settle it here, but we will revisit this. We'll revisit this again. But you need to keep in mind that virtually every villain in world history, every murderer, thief, mugger, bully, consulted his conscience and got the green light. Okay, so look, the reason why we have law books and religious texts that prescribe behavior is that we all understand that banking on our conscience is something that we should do with great trepidation. Okay? And as it happens, we have a nice example of this again with Abraham in the Hagar story. Okay? So when Sarah wants Abraham to banish Hagar and Ishmael, Abraham thinks it's wrong, but God says do it, so Abraham does it. Okay? Despite his own conscience, just as he will do with Isaac's sacrifice. Okay, so we're still on that, but let's start with chapter 16 first, when Sarah loses faith that she'd ever be able to conceive for Abraham, so she prods him to have sex with her Egyptian maidservant, so that, Sarah says, so that she can build a family through the child of her maidservant or slave woman. So clearly it's the second best course of action for both Sarah and Abraham, but what's important for us, or what we've already seen, is that it's clearly an indication of them losing faith in God's promise. Okay. And this is something that we see elsewhere in Genesis as well. We see, for example, Rachel, who is also barren, gives Jacob her servant to sleep with and procreate with. But so we might think that, okay, that's just a way for barren women to overcome their barrenness by having their slave woman do the procreating for her. Kind of like, I mean, in a way like a kind of surrogacy, although it's not like, I mean, the child is not considered Sarah's. I guess it doesn't matter. But there's this. I guess so sometimes we think of it as a solution for barren women. But when you look at Jacob's family, you see that Rachel isn't the only one who gave Jacob her slave woman to have sex with. Leah did it as well. Okay, and Leah had no problems conceiving. If you check out chapter 30, verse 18, it kind of clarifies 30, 18.
Okay, I have it. And Leah said, God has given me my reward for having given my maid to my husband. So she named him Iskar.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a kind of in Hebrew, it's kind of my reward. And so so it seems, based on the fact that it's not just Sarah, not just Rachel, but also Leah who does it, after she herself had the very previous sentence, verse, she just had a son. Where is it? 17. Yeah? So she already conceived a fifth son, and then she says, so that Jacob would have more sons here. So it seems to have been an act of good wifesmanship, barren or not barren. Okay, so you're helping your husband create a larger family. Okay, so you're basically, again, it's an act of, I know, of kindness, but a service to the family and to your husband's, to the household, to your husband's household. And this statement from Leah in verse 18 suggests that that it's an act that God and your husband and your family see positively. Okay, so it just kind of gives us a glimpse into this practice of in ancient families, Near Eastern families, because she suggests that it's an act that is rewarded, perhaps, with opening your own womb to more children. Okay, and so, again, yeah.
Would the Levirate law, or the marriage when husband dies, his younger brother becomes the wife or becomes the husband of the older brother's widow, thereby having offspring for the lost brother, along the same lines?
How so?
If having sons for the patriarch or
I see, I
the
see. Yeah,
husband,
yeah. So you're
more sons for Jacob, whether he's alive or dead.
yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm not being skeptical. I'm professing ignorance. I think that law that you're talking about. What's it called in English?
The Levirate marriage, or
Leave right, as in leave and right.
no, the Levirate.
Oh, levirate marriage. Okay. In Hebrew, it's called yibum.
Okay.
The act that the brother or the next in, basically what, okay, does for the wife, the widow. I think it applies, I really don't know, only when when the original husband dies childless. I think. But I'm not sure. But yeah, the idea is that the husband, alive or dead, requires children in order to provide for the family. So yeah, so the wife, of course, gives her own womb and other wombs that she's in charge of, basically. And of course, for and so it might have. So again, the fact that Leah does it means that it's an act of being a team player. But the way she puts it suggests that maybe there's this idea that it's such a good act on the part of the wife that it is rewarded by, again, by God if you're a monotheist, by karma, the gods, that it rewards you the wife, with more fertility if you do this. It's a kind of sacrifice, I guess, you know. Now, the Hagar story in chapter 16, you know, the first mention of Hagar, and the conception of Ishmael comes right after the covenant of the pieces. Remember that grisly alliance ceremony between God and Abraham, where he separates the animals and they walk together through. And during that covenant of the pieces, God again promises Abraham everything, including offspring as far as the eye can see. And the story of Hagar getting pregnant and delivering a son is followed by the next conversation between God and Abraham, in which God again promises a son, and Abraham laughs at this. Remember, he falls down and laughs internally. So it's clear that this story, so it comes after the covenant of the pieces, where he's promised a son. In the Hagar story, Sarah is still not getting a son. And then after this chapter, there's that scene where God again promises him a real son, and Abraham laughs. So it's clear that this story is part of the central storyline in the Abraham story. The fact that Abraham and Sarah are exasperated in our losing faith or gaining doubt about God's promise. Okay, they're feeling like dopes, or like dupes, having left everything behind, made all these sacrifices for a promise from a voice in Abraham's head. Okay, and they're clearly losing hope, as the Bible tells us a number of times. And here, the fact that Sarah says, "Have my slave woman." So after Hagar gets pregnant, she starts disrespecting her barren mistress, and she probably starts feeling as if she, the slave woman, has surpassed her mistress in Abraham's household, in the hierarchy of value, kind of what you're producing for the family. And if you look at, there's reason to think this, if you look at chapter 16, verse 5. 16:5. Yeah. How does it translate her anger at him?
So 16:5, and Sarai said to Abram, "The wrong done me is your fault. I myself put my maid in your bosom. Now that she sees that she is pregnant, I am lowered in her esteem. The Lord decide between you and me."
Right, you and me. Like, you have done me wrong, because the fact that she is treating me this way is because of you. Okay, you have allowed it. You've given her some sort of a signal. Okay, so he is treating Hagar in a way that encourages her to think that she, the fertile woman, is elevated above the barren wife. And Abraham, says, okay, okay, she's not ahead of you. She's your maidservant. She's yours, not mine. She holds no special status. Do whatever you want with her. And Sarah starts mistreating her and humbling her, basically making her know her place. Okay? At which point, again, the whole story where Hagar goes to the desert and the angel of God tells her to go back and suffer at the hands of Sarah. So Hagar will have two encounters with these angels of God. One here and one later on in chapter 21. The angel reminds her in this scene that, dude, you're pregnant. Okay? he reminds her that she can't just go and run away because she's carrying a child. He reminds Hagar and reminds us readers that for that child to be born and to survive, Hagar needs to be in somebody's household. Okay, there's no modern state with safety nets and social services. She needs to be in somebody's household, and Abraham's household is the only household that would take her in, obviously. Okay, so the angel tells her to go back by reminding her of her son. That there's a more important thing here than your suffering or enjoyment of life. And he promises her, and he tells her, it's important because he will be the patriarch of a great people. Okay, and you have a duty, so go back so that this son can be born and live and become this great man. Excuse me. Then 14 years pass as Sarah goes from being merely barren and old to being now barren and really, really old. And then the miracle. Abraham gets the real son from Sarah. And then, 4 years after that, in chapter 21, we get part 2 of the Hagar story. Okay? In which Sarah and Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away because Ishmael does something that troubles or irks Sarah. Okay? Now the translators differ on what Ishmael is doing to or with Isaac. And the translators to Greek or English differ just like the Hebrew commentators differ. Okay, so some have it as Ishmael being drunk, others have it as Ishmael mocking or belittling Isaac. Others suggest that it's a sexual act, that he's sexually abusing Isaac, because the term. So how do you have it? How does your translation have it? This is verse 9, 21:9.
Sarah saw the son.
So he has. So the Isaac is weaned, and then apparently you have some sort of big feast,
Mm-hmm.
And then verse 9 has what?
Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had born to Abraham playing. She said to Abraham, "Cast out that slave woman and her son."
So playing. So the reason. So in Hebrew it's laughing, mitzachek, like the name Yitzchak. Tzachak. So it's laughing, and so it could be that he just is laughing. Okay, why is that bothersome? Because he might be laughing at. Okay, so again, belittling or kind of chiding or again mocking Isaac. It might be that he's drunk, laughing because he's drunk. Okay. And the reason why there's reason to think that it might be a sexual act is because in the story of Isaac and Rebekah, when Isaac is, they go to the king of Gerar, and Isaac again pretends that his wife is his sister. Just you read that, right? Yeah, yeah, did, of course. So the verb that is used there, so he's pretending that they're brother and sister, and then Avimelech, the king's servants, see Isaac metzachek, same verb as here, laughing, with Rebekah.
Okay.
And there's somewhere else, I forget where, where letzachek, to laugh, is, again, I don't know if I should use the term euphemism, but it's, okay, so a question in English. When we say John slept with Jane, by which we mean John had sex with Jane, is that a euphemism, or is that just a it doesn't seem like a euphemism because it's not.
No, it seems like just a turn of phrase.
Yeah, turn of phrase. Okay, yeah. So it might be a euphemism, mitzachek, laughing, or it might just be a turn of phrase at the time, which was common, but has been lost to us. Okay, but so we don't know. So it could be either of these things, because again, when it says that your translation playing, just like laughing in Hebrew, she saw him laughing. That's not offensive. So there must have been something that would have seemed, again, either egregious or even not egregious, but bothersome. Okay, so maybe playing meant playing with something, or playing at the expense of something, who knows. So it's completely unclear and unknowable to us, but whatever it is, whatever Ishmael did, it triggers in Sarah a protective instinct, to protect her son from Hagar's son, or to protect her son's inheritance as the junior son, again the second son, by removing the eldest son. Okay, but something in this act clarified this worry about Isaac's safety or future or status or whatever else, and that's why in verse verse 9 and verse 10, Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, and then the next one did cast away the slave woman and her son. Okay, because the son of the slave woman will not inherit with my son, Isaac. Okay, so it clarifies that for Sarah there's a status issue here. He is the son of the slave woman, the son of the slave woman, the slave woman, the son of the Egyptian woman. Okay, there's a status thing. Well, we already know that there's a status thing between a status concern or anxiety in Sarah about being usurped or surpassed by her slave woman, but now the same thing with the sons. Okay, that my son's the real son. In any case, so just as she saw the rise of Hagar in the family hierarchy as a threat to her in chapter 16, she sees Ishmael as a threat to her son Isaac in chapter 21. Okay, and so she tells Abraham, she demands that he send them away so that Ishmael will not, again, endanger or abuse or simply threaten the inheritance of Isaac. Again, eldest son threatened the inheritance of the lesser son, younger son. And the interesting thing, or something for us to keep in mind, is that whatever it was that troubled Sarah, which we don't know what it was exactly, we know that God agreed with Sarah. Okay, so she's not crazy. And God sides with her and tells Abraham to heed Sarah's instruction. Okay, so again, we don't know exactly what Sarah saw, but God saw it too. Okay. So now, as an aside, full disclosure, if you remember, I told you about the Abraham story, that it revolves around 7 conversations with Abraham, of God with Abraham. 7, of course, is a very meaningful number in the Bible. The conversation that God has with Abraham when he tells her to do what Sarah tells him is actually actually God has 8 conversations, but I don't count. I mean, I don't. Others don't either. Well, I mean, in terms of the literary significance, this conversation isn't counted among those 7 conversations between God and Abraham. And you might consider it cheating, a way to get to 7 rather than 8, because who cares about 8 conversations? But this message from God, telling him to do what Sarah tells him to do about Hagar, is not about the Abraham-God relationship. Okay, it's about domestic. It's about the Sarah-God. It's about the Abraham-Sarah relationship. Okay, the other 7 encounters are stages in God's relationship with Abraham. Okay? They're conversations that God initiates to address Abraham's doubt and address God's frustration with Abraham's doubt. Okay? And this doesn't address that. Okay, but so technically, so actually, again, I don't want you to take it to the bank that there are 7 conversations. There are in fact 8, but there are 7 that really are stages in the God and Abraham relationship. So chapter 16 about Sarah giving Hagar to Abraham strengthens the main storyline about Abraham and Sarah's desperation and loss of faith in God. Okay, so that's one function of chapter 16. It also functions as an explanation for future events. Okay? Why will God send his people into bondage in Egypt? Okay, because he tells Abraham, you'll have descendants, they will go and become slaves for X hundred years, and then come back and become a great people, etc., etc. Okay? So why will God send his people into bondage in Egypt? And again, remember that this story comes right after the covenant of the pieces. Okay, that's where Abraham, where God tells Abraham this. Okay, so when they read about the covenant of the pieces, it was a big question. Why? Why is God doing this, sending Abraham's descendants into bondage in Egypt? And then comes this Hagar story with an Egyptian slave woman that Sarah torments in one way or another. Again, it's unclear what she does to her. Okay, so since the Bible sees itself as a book of divine justice, perhaps this placement serves an additional function of explaining God's prophecy in the previous chapter in the covenant of the pieces, explaining that to the readers, showing them that Sarah's mistreatment of her Egyptian slave woman in chapter 16 explains the punishment inflicted on Sarah's offspring. So like Sarah humbles and distresses and abuses her Egyptian slave woman, the Egyptians will enslave and humble and distress and abuse Sarah's offspring. And Ishmael will become a great people who will live in enmity with Sarah's offspring. Okay, so to explain. So chapter 16 helps us understand the story of Abraham and Sarah better. Again, their desperation, their growing lack of faith and trust in God, as well as helping us understand God's prophecy in the previous chapter about bondage in Egypt. So that's so we understand what's the function what's the purpose, the function of chapter 16, what it does for us as readers. But chapter 21 is more of a head scratcher. Okay, the one about sending Hagar and Ishmael away. Okay. What does what is chapter 21 for? What is it? Yeah, what's it for? What does it do for the character development?
There's something about the arrangement, the love triangle between Sarah, Abraham, and Hagar that will not allow them to live together, to be a family together, I suppose.
Yeah. But what do you learn about the? Because look, we saw this triangle being an unhealthy triangle in chapter 16 already. Okay, we see the enmity between the slave woman and Sarah, between us and them, between the Israelites and the Egyptians. What does 21 add to that? I mean, because we already.
So if in the previous story, Hagar did come back and was somehow put in her place, and everything was calm for a while. Her son and Sarah's son seemed to have built into their relationship perhaps a similar tension.
Yeah.
Their offspring.
And it is a good point that, so Hagar can be made to know her place because she is a slave woman, whatever that means. But Ishmael is not. Ishmael is, and we see this with, whenever a wife gives her slave woman to the husband to have sex with and produce and procreate with, the children are real children in the family. We see it in Jacob's family. I think 4 or 5 of those 12 children are of Leah's and Rachel's slave women, and they're a normal part of the family, and they inherit with the other children. They're not born slaves. It's not like our slavery, like chattel slavery. Yes, so it does point out that Ishmael cannot be made to know his place because his place is as a normal child in the family, the eldest, in fact. Okay. But so that's a good point. What do you make of verse 15 to 17 when they're after being sent away?
Into 17, so that the God of Abraham is also
15 to
concerned.
17.
So I have in my text, I have when the water was gone from the skin, she left the child under one of the bushes and went and sat down at a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, let me not look on as my child dies. And sitting thus far, she burst into tears. God heard the cry of the boy, and an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her. So the biblical God the God of Abraham is also vested in Ishmael and his mother.
Okay, so second, there's the choice of word of the translator where she left the boy. Where is it? She left the boy. Where is it? She left the boy under one of the bushes. Is that what yours says?
Yeah, under one of the bushes, and she went and sat down a distance, a bow shot away.
Yeah, so she left him under a bush, and she went a bow's shot away, so that she won't witness her son dying. So that's that's a choice of the translator to solve a problem, because the Hebrew word is not placed him. Okay, but or left him. But let's forget that for a second. What is when you read this that? Okay, just read 17 and 18 slowly.
God heard the cry of the boy, and an angel of
Oh,
God called to him.
sorry. 16 and 17.
Okay. And went and sat down at a distance, a bowshot away, for she thought, let me not look on as the child dies. And sitting thus far, she burst into tears. God heard the cry of the boy.
By the way, in Hebrew, it says, and she cried out, like she raised her voice and cried. Okay, so she raised her voice and cried, and then 17.
And God heard the cry of the boy, and an angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heeded your cry.
Okay. So what's the problem there? In 17 to 18. Sorry, in 16 to 17.
It's the boy she's the one who's bursting into tears, and then God heard the boy cry.
Right. It says she raised her voice and cried, and then immediately, and God heard the voice of the boy. Okay, as you know, she raises her voice and cries out, or cries, but God hears the boy's voice as he lay dying far away from her. Again, a bow's shot. The distance of an arrow, I don't know how long that is, but we're talking about at least 200 or 300 meters. Okay? So she's crying, but God hears the boy's voice. She raises her voice, but God hears the boy's voice.
And then the messenger goes to her.
Yeah, to do something. Yeah. And the scene explains to us the meaning of Ishmael's name. Okay, you know Hebrew, okay? Ishmael, God will hear, or God hears. Okay, God hears this boy. Okay? So we find out that God cares for this boy. Okay? Which we already knew at the beginning in chapter 16. That's not enough. I mean, it builds it, But what's the Bible? What's the author telling us here about Hagar?
Well, Hagar seems to be maybe a step down from Ishmael, not as important. God hears Ishmael, not Hagar. But right. Hagar is the one who's comforted.
Yeah, look, God is attentive to Ishmael, not to her. God's concern, even in chapter 16, was for Ishmael, not for her. Okay, so what's, why is this? What's the Bible's problem with Hagar?
She's Egyptian. She wasn't part of that original.
Yeah, but look, none of all of these women are, like, the only Abrahamic person here is Abraham, the only quote-unquote Jew or Israelite. Like, they're all foreign.
Well, Sarah's from Haran.
Yeah. I mean, yes, Sarah, Rebecca,
Rachel.
Yeah, they're all from Leah. Yeah, but they're all, again, they're pagan, the people of Haran. Like, what's the
the other stark contrast is the child Ishmael was brought about not because of something, at least that we see that the biblical God put in motion, but rather an idea that came out of Sarah's head. Like, whereas the biblical God kind of puts into motion, I don't know about Abraham and Sarah, but after that, when everyone has to go back to Haran to find a spouse,
right?
It seems like the spouse is picked,
right?
A part of the plan. Whereas Hagar didn't necessarily become part of the plan.
Yeah, but again, that's true also of the other slave women.
Are they? But are the other slave women? I guess they don't have to leave.
Yeah, that means that they come into the household with Leah and Rachel. Look,
I don't know.
when Hagar fled to the desert, again, God had to remind her that you're carrying a child who has a future. Okay? For this boy to live, you have to go back. Again, there's no welfare system or an employment system. If a pregnant woman didn't belong to someone's household, where would she live? How would she feed herself? How would she feed and shelter and clothe herself and the child after pregnancy? Okay? So God told her to go back to Abraham and Sarah so that that child could be born and live and have the future he's going to have. And here again, in 21, the biblical author chooses purposefully to portray her as a less than admirable mother. Okay, she was negligent. In chapter 16, she was thinking of her own suffering rather than the needs of the unborn child. And here too, she's clearly, she tells us, she's thinking about her own suffering, her own sorrow, rather than the boy's needs. Okay, the dying boy, if he's dying, probably needs to have a comforting mother near him, rather than having the mother go away 300 yards so that she won't be heartbroken by the sight of her dying son. Okay, but look, the author chooses to tell us she walked away a long distance from him, and the word in verse 15 is not she left the child under one of the bushes, but she threw, or she tossed. Okay, so she tossed him under one of the bushes. Okay? It's a big question here. How can you toss a 14 or 17-year-old boy? Ever since she was cast off by Abraham, it kind of says that Abraham put the child on her. It keeps talking about him like a child. So, yeah. The important thing isn't what happened there, but the word that the author chooses to use in order to convey the events, and he chooses not to say that she left her there in her grief, or laid him, or placed him, okay? But rather she tossed him, or threw him there, or cast him off there. Okay? And the author clarifies that she does this because she is distraught and sad, but he's clearly critical of her motherhood. Yeah. So the choice of words that the choice of word tossed him or discarded him by the under the bush, and that she went. It doesn't say. Again, he could have just said, and she went away so that she won't see him or hear him. Okay, but it says she went away a huge distance. Okay, so the important thing isn't what happened, but how the author is choosing to portray it. Okay, these are insertions that are clearly critical of her as a mother, as the author was in chapter 16 as well. Okay? And it's not just the author. God too is critical at this point. Okay? He intervenes by tenderly chastising Hagar to go and save her son already. And he goes to her, okay, and tells her, "What's the matter? What is it, Hagar?" Don't be afraid, because God has heard the voice of the boy as he lays there. Get up and carry the boy, and hold your hand to him, because I will make him a great nation. Okay, so he says, don't abandon him way over there at a distance. Okay, so he tells her, just like the angel did in chapter 16, don't be wrapped up in your own hardship. You're a mother. Dedicate yourself to your son. Save your son. And it's I think it's meaningful that in verse 19, God doesn't intervene. God doesn't do anything supernatural for Hagar. Okay, and again, in chapter 16, he didn't miraculously provide her with he could have provided her with a husband, or a new family, created a new family for her to go and, kind people who will take her in and be nice to her. Okay, he didn't do it. He just said, go back and do what's needed to be done for the son. Okay, and here in chapter 21, again, he doesn't miraculously create water for her, create a well for her. The well, it says here clearly, the well has been there all along. Okay, God simply helped her see a well that was already there. Okay, this is something that she could have done had she not given up looking. Okay, nothing supernatural happened here, except the angel kind of giving her a kick in the rear. Don't give up. Go help your son. And then she notices the well. Okay? So look, we didn't think this. And by the way, and you can tell that your translator look, your translator did not see the author as critical of Hagar, because a lot of us read the story of Hagar in a very sympathetic way. Okay? But so because if you think that we're supposed to sympathize with her, then of course the translator will get rid of that word toss. Okay, and the bow shot. So look, we don't think of in the first Hagar story, in chapter 16, when we read chapter 16, we don't necessarily understand it as a critical story about Hagar. But now, in light of chapter 21, the second episode, it's clear that there is some critique. It's clear that chapter 21 is critical of Hagar. That's clear. Okay? And now, in light of chapter 21, we can maybe look back at chapter 16 and say, okay, maybe that there's a pattern, that what we see here is actually a pattern of a mother abdicating her maternal duties. Okay? The biblical author is telling us, telling the readers, that God cared for this boy when his mother did not. God saved this boy twice by urging Hagar to persevere, not give up, not be afraid, and do the right thing by her son. And then the author, for good measure, adds, after the boy is saved, okay, so God opened her eyes and she saw the well, and she gave the boy water. And then in 20, actually, how do you have verse 20?
God was with the boy, and he grew up. He dwelt in the wilderness, became a bowman.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So, so it's clarified. So again, God cared for the boy when the mother did not. Basically, God is the only reliable character in Ishmael's life. His father sent him away. His mother-in-law, his stepmother, or whatever Sarah is to him, we don't even need to mention that. His father sent him away. His mother cast him off, threw him away at the bushes. And then, as he lay dying, she went 300 meters away. But God saw him, and God heard his voice, and God saved him again, a second time. Okay? And after the boy was saved, God was with him thereafter. Okay? So we're told that God was with this child before he was born, when he was a child, and in verse 20, thereafter. Okay? The kid survived, and God was with him thereafter. Okay? So the story, the two episodes of Hagar, the second episode is clearly critical. I think in light of the second episode, you can read the first episode as critical as well, since it shows a pattern. But the other pattern it shows is that God cares for Ishmael. God is with this boy. He's always been with this boy when no other character has been. Okay? So why is it, again, and this again is not speculation, the Bible, whether or not you buy this critical angle about Hagar, doesn't matter. The supportive, the reading that God is with this boy, God cares for this boy, God hears this boy, God saves this boy, is clear. Okay, so why is it important, clearly important for the biblical author to clarify 3 times now that God has a soft spot for Ishmael? Again, that God cares for him, that God made a promise to him, that God is committed to him.
I have to think it's because of his offspring. His offspring. His line is going to come into contact with the Israelite.
Right. Right. These people will remain in the storyline moving forward, just like the descendants of Lot, the Ammonites and the Moabites, and the descendants of Ishmael, of Esau. Okay, the Edomites and the Amalekites. So it could be, this emphasis on God's connection with Ishmael could be there to tell this book's Jewish audience that your regional rivals are your family. Okay, the Ishmaelites on your border are not Canaanites. Okay, they're not mortal enemies to be destroyed. And the same goes for the Ammonites, the same goes for the Moabites. Okay, they're rivals, but they're family. They're your cousins. And the Edomites as well. Okay, so the Canaanites will be enemies. Okay, when the Israelites leave Egypt and enter Canaan, or before they enter Canaan, God tells them to, I forget the exact phrasing, but it says, avoid the Canaanites, don't marry them, destroy them, displace them. Okay, that's the instruction from Moses before Joshua leads the Israelites into Canaan. The mission is to separate, is not mix in with the Canaanites, but to make war with them, to displace them, to destroy them, erase them, and take their land. That's the mission. Okay? But as they're instructed to do that to the Canaanites, God clarifies to them that that is not the case with these other peoples. Okay? God tells the Israelites explicitly not to trespass on their lands. Okay, he clarifies that these lands, the lands of Ammon, Moab, Edom, belong to these other nations, to these cousin nations, and they're not, God is not giving them to the Israelites. God gave them to Esau, to Ammon, and to Moab. The stories of Abraham and Lot, and Isaac and Ishmael, and Jacob and Esau clarify to Jews that these regional neighbors are part of their family. And in doing so, these stories clarify also that the Canaanites are not their family. And you can see this in the prohibition on marrying Canaanite girls. There's clearly no prohibition against marrying Moabite girls and Edomite girls, or Haranian girls. Okay? Ruth is a Moabite girl, mother of King David, or great-grandmother.
Grandmother.
So, look, as we've discussed, our method is not to kind of speculate and inject meaning into the text, but to try to follow the author, to try to read the author's mind through the author's choice of words. Again, like any literary analysis. So where in the text here, in the Hagar story in 21, can you see support for this idea that the story of Ishmael is meant to suggest, again, a connection, or that these people are cousins, unlike the Canaanites. You know, that all these people around Canaan, again, all these people are outside the land of Canaan. The Israelites are outside, and the Edomites, and the Moabites, who else? Edomites, Moabites, Ammonites, and Ishmaelites. They're all outside. Okay, so all these outside nations are family, and they're not connected to the Canaanites. Where can you see that this is not just a speculation, but that the text, it's important for the text to...
It says, when God tells Hagar that I will make him a great nation, I'll make a great nation of him.
Yeah, but I mean, so what? I mean, it doesn't clarify this kind of disconnection from the Canaanites, right? Okay, there are many great nations here. The Israelites, the Ammonites. Look, the Canaanites are a great nation too, or nations.
True. But it seems like Ishmael has this, the biblical God is his hatchet man. Like, it's assured by the biblical God. I don't know if the Canaanites had that kind of assurance or not.
Yeah, no, but again, there are many great nations in the region. Okay, the Sumerians, the Hittites, the who are those? The Aramaics. Okay, they're all over the place. They're great nations. Okay, so he'll be one of them. But in terms of this connection among these peoples, Abraham's descendants, and disconnection from the Canaanites.
He's disconnected from the Canaanites insofar as his wife doesn't come from there.
Right.
She comes from Egypt.
Yeah. Look, again, why mention this? You know, in 21, he sat in the desert of Paran, and his mother took him a wife from the land of Egypt. Because, you know, look, obviously he got married. Is it important? We know that the genealogies are important in the Bible. Okay, if he is in this. This is the desert between Canaan and Egypt. Okay. So if he's sitting in this land, maybe he took a wife from the region. We know that Esau will do that. Okay, but it's important for the author, for some reason, which I'm assuming is what I said, to clarify that Ishmael did not marry a local girl. He did not marry a Canaanite girl. Okay? And I want you to keep this in mind as we read the next episode, because the author will go out of his way to tell us the same thing about Isaac and Jacob and Esau. It's a bit complicated, but we'll see a similar message about how it's inappropriate to marry Canaanite girls. Okay, so Abraham tells his slave to go find a wife for Isaac, not from Canaan. I don't want him to marry one of these girls. And Isaac tells his sons, likewise, to not marry local girls. Okay? None of Abraham's descendants, none of the Israelite line, do this. Okay? Not Isaac, not Jacob, not Jacob's sons. Okay? Now Esau actually does marry 2 local Canaanite girls, but the story, as you've read, after Jacob flees, well, first of all, Rebecca tells Isaac, that she doesn't want Jacob to marry one of these girls, so let's send him away, one of these local girls. And then after Jacob leaves, Esau understands that his parents don't like the fact that he married these local girls, and therefore he marries a non-Canaanite girl as his 3rd wife. Okay. So he marries a non-Canaanite to please his parents. Okay. And this explains why the Israelites will be instructed, again, before entering the land with Joshua, to destroy the Amalekites, just like they're ordered to destroy the Canaanites. Okay? Because Amalek, the patriarch of the Amalekites, is the grandson of Esau. Okay? But he's not considered, the Amalekites, he's not considered a cousin to the Israelites, because Edom, the Edomites, the nation of Esau, Esau is, doesn't have any Canaanite blood in him. He's as Abrahamic as Jacob. Okay? And so that's, the Edomites are a cousin nation. But Amalek is at least half Canaanite, probably 3/4 Canaanite. Okay? And this explains also why the Amalekites reside in the land of Canaan. Okay? They're not like these Israelites and their various cousins who are around the land of Canaan. Okay, the Amalekites are in what is now southern Israel, the Negev desert. Okay, whereas the cousin peoples all are in this circle around, or half crescent, around southern Israel. Ishmaelites, Israelites, of course, are in Egypt. The Ishmaelites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, Ammonites, and Moabites. Okay, so that's one answer based on verse 21 to why this story emphasizes the fact that God is with this boy and cares for him, even when his mother does not, and father do not. Okay, because this theme of God caring for this child, God caring for this people, tells Israelites who are reading this today, in let's say the year 1000 BC or so, so hundreds of years after the events, it tells Israelite audiences that Ishmaelites are actually family to you. and Edomites and Moabites, etc. Okay? So that's one explanation. Again, just kind of for the future, for the readers. But there's another possible, simpler answer based on verse. Yeah, when God talks to Abraham about this in verse 11 to 13. Okay, so God answers this question too. So this answer that I kind of worked my way to is our answer. Okay, but God answers this question as well as to why He cares for this boy and why He's with this boy.
I have in 11.
11 to 13, when God tells Abraham to do what Sarah says.
I have the matter distressed Abraham greatly for a concerned son of his. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you to do, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him too, for he is your seed.
For he is your seed. Okay? God made a promise to Abraham to give him offspring and to make them a great nation, and God is a man of his word. Okay, so I will make him a great nation because he is your seed. Okay? I promised you. Okay? So when God tells Abraham to listen to Sarah and send Ishmael away, He's reassuring Abraham, because look, Abraham doesn't want to do it. He thinks it's wrong. Again, his conscience is telling him, I don't want to, he's my son, my real son. Maybe I even love him. Maybe I care for him. Okay? And so God reassures Abraham that this is not a death sentence. Okay? Sending him away is not a death sentence to Ishmael. He, God, will take care of the boy will be okay, and I will make a great nation of him, just like I promised. Okay? So the question is, why does Abraham believe him? Okay, we know that Abraham doesn't want to do it. It says it was bad in his eyes, Sarah's demand. He thought it was bad. His conscience told him this is wrong. Okay, but when God says, do it, he does it. So why does he do it?
Well, this is after Isaac was born.
Right.
So this is after the
right.
Now quintessential.
Exactly. He knows. This God really is God. This God is just. This God knows what He's doing. Like even when I think He doesn't know what He's doing, He knows what He's doing, and He's doing what's best for me, or for my family. Okay, so like we had kind of a bigger question. We answered this question when we discussed Isaac's sacrifice. Okay, why does he do it? Because he believes that this really is God, and that God is good, and that God is capable. Okay, so the birth of Isaac had removed all of Abraham's doubts about God, and so now he trusts God's judgment and God's plan and God's good sense and God's faithfulness to him, to Abraham, and God's support. Again, the important thing is that he trusts God now. Again, he's sending away his son. He's killing his other son. Okay? He trusts God not by faith, which includes doubt by necessity. Okay, again, the predicament of the man of faith. He trusts God by evidence of 100% bona fide miracle. Okay, the birth of a son to a 100-year-old man and a 90-year-old woman who has stopped ovulating years and years ago. Okay, so before, we've spent an hour on this almost. So before we move to Isaac, two last things about the Abraham story that actually involve Isaac and Jacob. The first is this theme with brothers. Okay? Of the first two brothers in the Bible, God showed preference to Abel over Cain. With Abraham's family, God favors Isaac over Ishmael. Then Jacob over Esau. Then God chooses Joseph, number 11 on the depth charge, over his elder brother. Actually, not 11. I think he's, actually it doesn't matter. He's way down. Okay, he chooses Joseph over his elder brothers. Okay? There's another one when Jacob on his deathbed, Joseph brings his two sons to get a blessing from Ephraim and Menashe. He brings them to the elderly Jacob to have the patriarch bless them. Jacob blesses the younger son Ephraim over the firstborn. Okay, it's in Genesis 48, 14 to 19, if you want to look it up. So again, preferring the younger brother over the older. Moses is the younger brother to Aaron. King David, the younger of his brothers. Okay, so this is not a one-off thing with this or that brother. It's a consistent theme. It's a literary motif, a pattern. It's a purposeful design that the biblical author has been using and will continue to use. Okay, and given the fact that it's so ubiquitous, it repeats itself all the time, we have to ask, what's the purpose? Like, well, why is the author doing this? Or why is God doing this?
Was it, the custom at the time, was it primogeniture? Was it firstborn inherits?
Yeah. I mean, look, that's the
So this would,
custom.
that's everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah, and clearly here too. I mean, when Jacob comes to bless the younger ahead of the older, Joseph tells him, no, you got it wrong. This is the older. And Jacob says, I know what I'm doing. Okay. And again, with Esau and Jacob, clearly the elder has first rights of inheritance. Okay, the natural order of things is for the elder to have a preferred status, a higher status.
So would it be contrary to firstborn inheriting by law, that rather somebody chooses who is best or most fitting, or the first way, the law way, is kind of a blunt instrument where things would be proceeding by chance depending on who the character of whoever was born first, as opposed to there being a thoughtful decision on how the line is supposed to be.
Look, I didn't think of it as a thoughtful decision, but you're right. I thought of it as, because look, we see the same pattern in fairy tales. Okay, it's the younger son, the younger sister, who, to all of our surprise, wins, prevails, becomes the grand victor in the end. Okay, and so the ugly the ugly duckling becomes the swan. The little piglet winds up winning, etc. The poor child becomes a king. So it could be what you're saying, that God is choosing by kind of choice of he's making a character choice rather than simply following nature or the human
custom,
or the human
merit
custom.
versus custom.
Yeah. But it could be a matter not of show, because in the fairy tales it's not God choosing the ugly duckling or the piglet or the young piglet or the younger prince. Okay, it's again, it's not a choice, but it clarifies that this is against nature. It's against custom. Okay, so perhaps it illustrates the power of God to elevate the lesser, to elevate the runt, to elevate the least favored by the biological father, elevate them over the older, the stronger, the more favored, the one who should prevail according to human law and custom. Okay, so it might be, you're right, it might be choice, and it might be power. Okay. So that's one observation that, again, it's a theme that we're encountering here as well. The other is, I asked you to see if you can find, or what you can find about Sarah's role in the binding of Isaac. Any success?
She doesn't.
I mean, what I told you is to see if you can find in the Isaac story something that'll, because look, she's absent in the
Right.
in the binding of Isaac. Okay, her husband takes her son, again, the son for whom she waited and suffered and anguished for 90 years, and felt the sting of shame and humiliation, of being barren, of being mocked by her own slave woman. And now, after all this, Abraham takes that son so he can slaughter him. Okay, so it's odd that she's absent in the story. It's odd that we're not told of any conversation with her or any response from her. Okay. What is there, though, that might be some sort of comment, hidden comment, about her situation in this story, in the binding of Isaac? When you read the Isaac story.
Sarah, she lived past this. She dies in the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We also know that Isaac didn't come back with Abraham from Mount Moriah, and that Abraham and Isaac aren't seen as talking or being in the same vicinity as each other.
Right. They don't have another scene together. Okay. The last scene is they're coming down from the mountain, no conversations. They don't share a scene from now on. And the same with Sarah.
That Isaac does come back for Abraham's funeral with Ishmael.
Yeah.
Let's I read it. Trying to figure out. When Sarah doesn't know what's going on, that this was done without her knowledge, and then when he comes back.
Where do you get that?
Well, at the beginning, when that whole conversation between God and Abraham, when God introduces this, he goes right away.
Yeah, but look, it doesn't tell us. Look, he might have told Sarah, I'm going to kill your son. Okay? He might have told Sarah, Isaac and I are going on a journey. he might not have told her anything. Okay, the text doesn't say, look, she's absent. Okay, so we don't know if she knew and what she knew, because, again, she's just not there. The text doesn't tell us anything about her at this scene. But look, take a look at after Eliezer, Abraham's slave, comes back with Rebekah. This is in 24, at the end of 24. Okay, like verse 40, 50, no, 40, sorry, 46. 46, 47. Okay, so Eliezer, the slave, and Rebekah come to the household. Do you see it? And
The ring?
in this is 24, verse 46, 47.
So I have, she quickly lowered the
Oh,
jaw.
I'm sorry. It's 50, sorry. It's 56, 57. The end of the chapter.
To the end.
It says, and the slave told Isaac all the things that he did, meaning the whole story of how he met Rebekah and negotiated, etc. Everything that happens in this chapter.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah, that is 66 there. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he took Rebekah as his wife. Isaac loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death. So this happens after his mother's death.
yeah. Well, look, we know the mother died.
Right in
chapter whichever. Okay, she's buried. She's 23. Oh, okay, the previous chapter. Okay, 23, 1, 2. She died near Hebron, or in Hebron, and that's the whole episode where Abraham buys the burial plot, etc., etc. Okay, so again, so basically, she's absent in the binding of Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the previous chapter. Yeah, 22 is the binding of Isaac,
mm-hmm.
and then
23 is this.
And then they Isaac is saved. They come back to Beersheba, and Abraham said in Beersheba, he has more children born to him by these concubines, and then the next chapter, Sarah dies, and then again, and the whole chapter is about buying the burial plot, and then Abraham, the next chapter after that, 24, is Abraham sending the slave to bring back Rebekah, and that chapter ends with the slave coming back with Rebekah, and Isaac bringing Rebekah to his mother's tent, and she was a wife to him, and he loved her, and he found comfort after his mother's death.
So he's been in or I don't know if he's been in contact with his mother to get his mother's tent before or after she died. But apparently her death is relatively recent insofar as he's still in mourning.
Yeah, so it could be. Again, look, we'd have to do various calculations if there are, in these chapters, if there are certain timestamps about how long something took or other. I really don't know. I don't know if it's been a long time since Sarah's death. I guess we can calculate by Abraham's age, because in chapter 25 Abraham dies, right?
Yeah.
24. Oh, no. No, no, Abraham took another wife and had more children. Okay, never mind. Okay, so look, it might have been recent or it might not have been recent. The distance between Sarah's death and Rebecca being brought over as a wife for Isaac. But the question is, again, I don't know. Look, it seems odd to me. It seems odd to me because I've read it in others who found it odd that the author would choose to inform us that Sarah had her own tent. Look, maybe it was common because Abraham by now is rich. Okay, so maybe it was common among the rich, kind of like among our rich, that the husband and wife have their own separate wings in the house, separate bedrooms. Maybe. But maybe Sarah set up her own tent after Abraham tried to kill her son. That also is a possibility, which might go, again, we're in the dark. Okay? But Sarah is absent in the binding of Isaac, and Sarah, it might be significant that the Bible does not record any conversation or any interaction between, sorry about that, the Bible doesn't record any conversation or any scenes, any interaction of any kind between Abraham and Sarah after Mount Moriah, after the binding of Isaac. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that they didn't interact, but the Bible doesn't show us any contact between the two. Okay? And like you said, the Bible also doesn't record any conversation or any interaction between Abraham and Isaac either after the aborted sacrifice. Okay, they walk down the mountain, rejoin the others, return home. No conversations recording during the walk, no conversation for the rest of their lives. Okay? Abraham gets Isaac a wife. He gives him everything he owns. He sends off his other sons, not just Ishmael, but also the other sons that Abraham had from the other concubines. He sends all of them away from the land so that they won't compete with Isaac. This is in 25, 1 through 6. 25. Yeah, so it says all these people, all these sons born to Abraham. And then in 5, and Abraham gave everything he had to Isaac, and to the sons of the concubines he gave them gifts and sent them away from Isaac while he was still alive, while Abraham was still alive. He sent them eastward, sent them away. Okay, so Abraham definitely does all these things for Isaac. But there's no scene, not one scene, in which Abraham actually interacts with Isaac. Okay, there's no recorded scene in which the elderly father blesses the son, like usually happens with elderly sons before they die. Elderly fathers before they die, like Isaac and his sons, like Jacob with his sons and grandsons. Okay. Instead, actually, this is a good one. If you look at, again, 25, okay, just after this, okay, so he sends away the other sons. That's in verse 6. And then, 7 and 8, and these are the chronicles, or the years of the life of Abraham, who lived 175 years. And he died, and where is it? Okay, good. So he dies. In verse 10, he's buried alongside Sarah, and then verse 11. And after the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son. Okay, so usually the father, the elderly father, blesses the sons before the death scene. No such scene here. God does the fatherly duty. Okay, so again, this is complete speculation, but the fact that the author doesn't record any interaction, any conversation, including where we would expect conversation, like providing a wife, like giving Isaac everything he had, like blessing you before I die, it might be that both Sarah and Isaac were estranged from Abraham from that day on, from the day at Mount Moriah, because of the emotional wound that Abraham inflicted on Sarah and Isaac. And again, we're told, what you read earlier about Isaac bringing Rebekah to his mother's tent and being comforted over the death of his mother. So we're told of Isaac's grief over his mother's death. Okay, when Abraham dies, again, what I just read to you in 25, 8 to 11, we're not told that Isaac grieved for him. Okay, silence. Just like the silence on that walk down from the hill after the aborted sacrifice scene. Okay. So again, it could be that that there's a message here by the author about the bad relationship in the family, or the consequences of the sacrifice on Abraham's relationship with his son and his wife, maybe. Okay, so we need to move forward to Isaac. But before we get to Isaac and his dysfunctional family, I want to get back to this thing about Canaanite girls, which will be meaningful to us in this drama and moving forward. So if you could do me a favor and read the English version of Genesis 24, verse 3 and 4.
So I have, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but will go to the land of my birth and get a wife for my son Isaac.
Right, okay. Now read 26, 34, 35. 26, 34, 35.
When Esau was 40 years old, he took to wife Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basmath, daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they were a source of bitterness to Isaac and Rebekah.
Right. And now read 27. Now 27, verse 46. 27. 46.
Rebekah said to Isaac, I am disgusted with my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries a Hittite woman like these from among the native women, what good will life be to me?
Right. And then, 27, 46. Yeah, and then also the first verse of 28.
So Isaac sent for Jacob and blessed him. He instructed him, saying, you shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women.
Yeah. And then verse 8 and 9 from there. I'm sorry, wait. Verse... Yeah, 7 and 9. Well, actually, verse 6. Yeah. Verse 6, and then 8 and 9.
When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him off to Padan Aram, to take a wife from there, charging him as he blessed him, "You shall not take a wife among the Canaanite women." And Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and gone to Pad Aram.
Okay,
Esau,
actually, so yeah, so basically, okay, so if you read 6 through 9, it basically says that Esau saw that Jacob was sent off to Aram, to the land of the Aramaics, to get a wife, so that he won't marry a Canaanite girl, and that Jacob left. And then in 8 and 9, Esau saw that it is bad, or that the girls of Canaan, that the women of Canaan are bad in the eyes of his father Isaac. And therefore Isaac went to Ishmael and took Machlat, the daughter of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, the daughter of Nebayot, to be his wife. Okay, so Esau understood that his parents don't like people, their sons marrying Canaanite girls, so he went and took the daughter of Ishmael, who we know is not a Canaanite, because the Bible took care to tell us that he married an Egyptian girl. Okay, so again, so you can see here that the Torah goes out of its way to clarify to its audience, its Israelite audience, that Israelites should not marry Canaanite girls. No Canaanite girls. Okay, and again, the Hittites that are mentioned here are the people from whom Abraham bought Sarah's gravesite. Okay, these are not the Hittite empire of from Turkey. These are one of the Canaanite peoples. Okay, in fact, they're listed. If you look at Deuteronomy 7, verse 1, and Deuteronomy 20, in verses 16, 17, there's a list there of the 7 peoples, 7 in one place, 10 in another place, peoples of Canaan. The Hittites are mentioned as one of them. Okay, so this is not those Hittites, these are Canaanite Hittites. So, again, the Bible is telling you as explicitly as it can, no Canaanite marriages. And add to these strictures also the Hagar story that we discussed, in which we're told explicitly that Ishmael married an Egyptian, not a local girl. Okay? So the point is that Abraham's sons and grandsons and great-grandsons all marry non-Israelite girls. Okay? They all marry, there are no Israelite girls. Okay? So they all marry foreigners, but none of them, again, except for the Esau thing, they do not marry Canaanites. Okay? But the Torah, even with Esau, the Torah's point is that even if Esau's line did mix with Canaanites, the Israelite line, Jacob's line, never did. It has always been separate from the Canaanites. No intermarriages, no Canaanites in this bloodline. And again, I think the reason why the Edomites are treated differently than the Amalekites is that the Amalekites are descended from Amalek, who is again at least a half Canaanite, whereas the Edomites, Edom, Esau, it actually twice the Bible says Esau, meaning Edom. It clarifies that Edom is another name for Esau. And so the Edomites are cousins, the Amalekites are Canaanites. And you'll see another, I think, clear message in this respect when next week you'll read in chapter 34 about the rape of Jacob's daughter, Dinah. You know, a whole chapter clarifies that the Israelite line from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob on down, never intermarried with Canaanites. Never, never, ever, under any circumstances, including rape. Because in that story, in chapter 34, a local Canaanite prince by the name of Hamor, who was the son of the king of Nablus, Shechem. So this prince, a Canaanite prince, rapes Dinah and then falls in love with her and wants to pay damage and marry her. Okay, now, in order to understand that chapter, as you read it, you need to know that the law in the ancient Near East, including in the Torah, was that if an unmarried virgin was raped, the rapist had to pay her family a penalty and marry her. Okay, so why would this be? Why would the custom be this way? If you think like an anthropologist.
If she was going to have a child, and she was exposed, and probably would have a tough time finding another husband to bear her children.
Yeah, so look, even if she didn't have a child, look, if she has a child, then of course, for the child not to be a bastard, look, just like we always had, shotgun weddings, okay, the father needs to marry the mother so that the child will have a father, will have a legal father. But forget the child, even if there's no child, like you say, by raping her, the rapist has made the victim unmarriageable. Okay? So not only does her father not get paid by some groom for the right to marry this girl, but instead, okay, so the father who's raised her all these years and is supposed to get paid by the groom's family as kind of as a compensation, because this daughter is now leaving his family. Okay, so it's called the bride price. Okay, so if the rapist makes her unmarriageable, the father will never get compensated for what he invested in this daughter. Okay, and instead, she now will stay in the father's household for life, which is an economic drain on the father. Okay, she's not she won't produce children for the family. Okay, because no man. Well, again, a daughter never stays in I mean, if she marries, she produces children for another family. Okay, in this case, she'll stay in the father's house and not be productive in this way. Okay. Number one. Okay, so the rape is a crime in this respect against the father, but also it's a crime against the rape victim, the woman, because a woman who is unmarriageable will never produce a family of her own, meaning she will never have a family to care for her in her old age. Okay, so again, if she remains in her father's household, she'll be this secondary, this appendage, because the father's son will become the new head of the household. Okay, and his aunt is in the household, but she of course comes second or third or fourth after the son's wives and children, etc. Okay, she kind of becomes a more distant part of the family, of the household. And if there's scarcity, of course, the head of the household's children are not going to be deprived of food or protection or whatever else. The wives won't. The concubines might. The unmarried spinsters who are in the house, also men who are crippled, or all sorts of kind of welfare cases. When things are good, they're taken care of. When things are bad, they're not in the inner circle. Okay? So again, so it robs her of creating for herself a welfare system for old age, which is what marriage and children are. Okay, so so forcing the rapist to marry the girl fixes this situation, both for the girl, both for the murder victim, rape victim, and for the father. Okay, because the father gets paid damages just as he would have gotten paid a bride price. Okay, and the girl, the rape victim, she becomes a married woman. Okay, she will produce children, which will give her status in her new family, will give her protection in her new family, and will give her aid in her old age. Okay, so again, so this is the kind of context of ancient Near East law about rape. Okay, so when you read this story of Hamor's rape of Dinah, even though Hamor, the rapist, and his father, the king of Nablus, offer to do the right thing, okay, according to the law or the custom at the time, Dinah's brothers, Jacob's sons, won't hear of it. Instead, they're so outraged, they take revenge and kill and plunder all the inhabitants of Nablus. Okay, so, and again, it's a very detailed story. I think what it indicates is that even in the most extreme circumstance that would warrant to marry an undesirable spouse. Okay, and again, the case here is a case of a rape victim, a case that literally no one on earth would marry. Again, think about the ancient Near East, okay, where again, a wife has to be a virgin. Okay, so so you have here a case in which literally nobody on earth would marry Dinah except for this Canaanite prince. And he's not just some schmo, he's a prince. Okay? But even then, the Israelites refused to marry into these people. Okay? Even when it means that Dinah will not have anyone from here on in. And even when the Canaanite in question happens to be a prince, okay, so you can marry into royalty. No. Okay, so the message is there are no Canaanites in this bloodline, ever, from Abraham down to to Joshua's invasion of the land. Okay, we are not Canaanites. We're separate from them. We have nothing to do with them, and that's why we're supposed to kill them. Unlike with the Edomites, who have their land and we're not allowed to invade them, to take their land. Same with the Moabites, same with the Ammonites, same with the Ishmaelites. These guys are not part of our family. You have nothing to do with them. Have at them. Okay, okay, so let's jump into the Isaac story. So, so what were the what traits did you identify in these four characters?
In Isaac, Rebecca,
Isaac, Rebecca, Esau, and Jacob.
So
actually, let's take them one by one. Isaac first.
Isaac seems to there's something, he's missing something.
What do you
he prefers Esau. He's got to be tricked into giving his blessing to Jacob by Rebecca, and the biblical God even is.
What do you mean missing something?
Why not? Why doesn't the biblical God just give his plan to Isaac that the line is supposed to go through Jacob.
Okay, but let's, because you're right. He does tell Rebecca this. God tells Rebecca, Jacob's going to be the winner. Okay, so
Right.
why doesn't he? But that's a question about God. But just the character of Isaac. Like, what do you make of Isaac? Like, what the author, obviously, like any story, the author gives you a certain impression of these people. Okay, in some, using certain words, telling certain stories, etc.
He also seems to be pretty easily duped with the whole scheme of Rebecca, just like feeling like the animal fur on Jacob, and like he can't see, blind.
Let's investigate that when we get to it. Actually, it's already 3 o'clock. So look, if we don't get to it today, we'll get to it next week. It's a question whether he's duped. But okay, so he seems what, like dim-witted a little bit, or like, well, just how would you characterize this character?
He's not part of the, like, Abraham was like the action, like everything kind of, Abraham and Sarah were in on the action, like Isaac doesn't seem to, Rebecca's in on the action. It seems the action's coming through Rebecca, not through Isaac.
Yeah. He's look, God does
Passive.
talk to him. He's passive. Okay.
Things happen to him. He doesn't do things.
Yeah. Things happen to him. He doesn't, like, he doesn't act. He's acted upon. Okay, whether it's Abraham who acts upon him, either at Mount Moriah or finding him a wife, and Isaac doesn't have to contend with his various brothers, kind of compete with them. Abraham does it for him. Abraham is the one who acts, sends Ishmael away, sends the other sons away, finds him a wife. People set things up, or people act on him rather than him acting. Whereas Rebecca is an actor. Abraham is an actor. Jacob and Esau.
Even Sarah's an actor.
Yeah.
With Hagar, and like, she takes.
Yeah. She is the one. She's the one who made Ishmael leave. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Also, if you compare the 2 episodes in Gerar with Avimelech, Abraham's interaction with Avimelech over the wells. Okay, in chapter 21, verse 21 to 33, there's this competition over wells between Abraham and Avimelech, and the king of Gerar. And Abraham is very assertive in the way he handles this kind of this border dispute or water rights dispute with his neighbor. Okay, by comparison, and Isaac has a repeat of Abraham's dramas in Gerar with Avimelech, both the issue of pretending that his wife is his sister, which both of them do, and this dispute over wells. For Isaac, it's chapter 25, verse 13 to 33. 25. 13. Right.
I think it might be 26 because we end up in Gerar.
Yeah.
26, 17. Built an altar.
26. 13.
I have 17, so Isaac started.
Okay, so it's okay, and he had And he had all this property, and the Philistines were envious of him, and all the wells that his father's servants or slaves dug were destroyed by the Philistines. And Avimelech sent Isaac away because he's become too wealthy. And he left and he settled wherever he settled. And he dug all these other wells.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they were again destroyed. And Isaac's slaves again dug another one. And then they had this dispute with the people of Gerar. This is mine, this is mine. And so he dug another one. And the people of Gerar claimed that one as well. And so Isaac leaves there and digs another one. Okay, so Isaac leaves the wells that he digs repeatedly to avoid conflict. Whereas Abraham had the same dispute and was very assertive in claiming or protecting what's his. Okay, so the only way this ends for Isaac is that he now, okay, you're claiming this well that I dug, okay, I'm going to move away, dig another one. Eventually he's so far away that he doesn't clash with his neighbors. Okay, so he's this, look, Isaac was presented to us, well, not from the beginning, but from after, when Rebecca comes to him. That language, that he brought her to his mother's tent, and he was comforted for the death of his mother. Okay, so he's presents him to us, because up until now the only thing we know of him is what happened at Mount Moriah. Okay, and so now we get this impression of him as this kind of mother's boy, like a mama's boy. And the story continues, and we see him lacking initiative, kind of like this. Again, being acted upon, being passive, not fighting for his wells. He's this kind of like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. This kind of sad sack. Now, actually, if you could take a look for a second at 26 again. 26, verse... Okay, yeah. So at the where's so 1 through 6.
So, there was a famine in the land.
1 through 7. 1 through 7.
There was a famine in the land aside from the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Avimelech, king of the Philistines in Gerar. The Lord had appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I point out to you. Reside in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. I will assign all these lands to you and your heirs, fulfilling the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your heirs as numerous as the stars of heaven, and assign your heirs all these lands, so that all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your heirs, inasmuch as Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my laws, and my teachings." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. And when the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," for he was afraid to say my wife, thinking the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebecca, for she is beautiful.
Yeah. So we just went through this whole thing with Abraham. Okay, where God, again, just like he did for Isaac here, God promises him, Abraham, that he'll protect him, and yet every time Abraham travels with his hot wife, he pretends that she's his sister, and lets her be taken by another man out of fear for his own life. Okay, so and it was this source of consternation for God, because Abraham clearly doesn't trust God with his life. He doesn't trust that God, again, is a man of his word, or didn't before the birth of Isaac, that God is a man of his word. And here we go again. God deigns to speak to Isaac, tells him not to leave the land of Israel, and everything will be all right. or not to leave the land of Canaan. And Gerar is part of the land of Canaan. Okay, it's in southern Israel. And he says, I will protect you, everything you just read. Everything will be all right. And the very next sentence, after God reassures him of this, we hear that Isaac does the same exact thing that his father did. Again, posing as his wife's brother and allowing her to be taken by another man. Okay? And in this respect, again, to your point about how God acts not through Isaac, but through Rebekah. Okay, so it's noteworthy that God doesn't go through that whole process with Isaac the way we saw him going with Abraham, trying to build Abraham's faith in him and showing him and in order to prove himself to Abraham. He doesn't go through that. He doesn't go through this process with Isaac to try to teach Isaac to trust him. Okay, it's as if he kind of gives up on Isaac. You know, Isaac doesn't have the. I don't know. I was going to say maybe Isaac doesn't have the character, but that God is looking for, but I don't know that. What is clear is that Isaac seems to be just there between his great father and his great son. Okay, God has a intimate relationship with Abraham. He has an intimate connection with Jacob, and we see here with this episode that God sees this the same way he saw it with Abraham. But with Abraham, he continued to try to work on Abraham's faith. We don't see this with Isaac. Okay, so I think you're right. Okay, so how about Rebekah? What's your impression of her? Or what impression did the author implant in your brain about Rebekah?
She's an actor.
She's an actor, yes.
Doer. And is cunning and doesn't hesitate to be deceptive.
Yeah. Like she, so look, we don't know this yet because we haven't read the story of Jacob in Haran, in the house of Lavan. How do you pronounce Lavan in English? Is it Lavan or?
Yeah.
Laban? Okay.
Or Laban.
Laban, yeah. She is Laban's sister. Okay, so we don't know him yet, but we will. Okay, and okay, so in retrospect, after audiences read the story of Laban and Jacob, and the deceit and torment that Laban put Jacob through, not only with Leah and Rachel and the deception there, but also with the everything else with his wages, etc. So we know Laban as a deceitful, cunning schmuck. Okay, and this is his sister. Okay, so anyone reading Genesis for the second time would already know this is that guy's sister. And that already will create an unfavorable, well, it's not a favorable association for Rebekah. Okay, in this, I think this bit of genealogy makes it clearer why Rebekah is such a terrible wife to Isaac, and why. Okay, because she's deceitful. She comes from that kind of family. Okay, and it explains, I think, also why Jacob turned out the way he did. Okay, Jacob is jealous, resentful, deceitful, like his mother and like his uncle. Okay, and it might even explain why Jacob was so drawn to Rachel. Okay, Jacob is the son of his mother, and he has her traits. Rachel is the daughter of Laban, and she has his traits. Okay, so Jacob and Rachel really are similar in this respect. Okay, Rachel, as Rebecca's niece, has the beauty of Rebecca, but also she's got some of Rebecca's character in her, and there's a connection there that Jacob responds to. So like we don't need to revisit how she coaches Jacob to deceive his aging blind father, her husband. But do me a favor and read 27:41 to 28:2. 27:41.
Now Esau harbored a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father had given him. And Esau said to himself, let but the mourning period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob. When the words of her older son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she sent for her younger son Jacob, and she said to him, your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now, my son, listen to me. Flee at once to Haran, to my brother Laban. Stay with him a while until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and forgets what you have done to him. Then I will fetch you from there. Let me not lose you both in one day. Rebekah said to Isaac,
Yeah,
I'm disgusted with my
why should I lose you both in one day? Meaning you and if Esau kills you, then I will lose you, and I will lose him too because he's a murderer. And okay, And then Rebekah said
to Isaac, I am disgusted with my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries a Hittite woman like these from among the native women, what good will my life be? So Isaac sent for Jacob and blessed him, and he instructed him, saying, you shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women. Go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethel, your mother's father, and take a wife from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother.
So, what do you learn about Rebekah here? Like, well, it's a very intricate drama here. Okay, what?
She apparently knows her sons pretty well. She cares for both of her sons. She says she doesn't want to lose Esau.
Yeah. Well, look, actually doesn't want him to dead. Doesn't show like
right.
If that really is the lowest bar for a mother. But okay.
And that she's upset about the Hittite women.
Yeah, but again, about her character, like what do you see here about her character?
She wants to take action to move the pieces around, and she'll do whatever she needs to do to get that done.
Yeah, but
she wants to control the situation, I suppose.
Yeah, but look, there's more scheming here. Okay, because at first, why are we even here? Because she
did the initial
put this plan to deceive Isaac, and now Esau is upset and everything else. Okay, but now so she comes up with this plan of sending Jacob to Haran. Okay. What does she tell Isaac? Okay, like we know, like she tells Jacob, okay, that I don't want Esau to kill you, and therefore go over there. Okay,
she says that she's sending him
until
over.
he forgets. Okay, what does she tell Isaac?
He basically tells him that she's sending Jacob over there because she doesn't want to deal with Jacob marrying a Hittite woman.
Exactly, it has nothing. We know she's sending him to protect Jacob from Esau. You know, she's sending him there because she's afraid Esau will kill him. She doesn't, you know, she doesn't tell Isaac about Esau's plan or about her own plan. Okay, she tricks Isaac again into executing her plan. Again, her plan is to send send Jacob to Aram, and she gets Isaac to execute her plan by telling him that she's concerned about Jacob picking a local girl. Deceit after deceit after deceit. But yeah, she thinks that she's the smartest person in the room, and apparently she's right. But this brings me to a problem that you'll see in verse 41-42, if you can read it slowly.
Of 27?
Yeah. So this is after the first deceit of kind of stealing Isaac's blessing.
Now Esau harbored a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father had given him. And Esau said to himself, "Let but the mourning period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob." When the words of her older son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you."
So, what's the problem here? Again, it's a minor problem, but
well, Esau is speaking to himself about this plan to kill his brother, and somehow his words to himself make it back to Rebekah.
Right. It was told to Rebekah. I don't know how it says. It says in Hebrew. It says Esau said in his heart, and then in 42 it says Esau's words were told to Rebekah, or Rebekah was told of Esau's words, and then she did Okay, so again, so it's a minor problem, but what are the possible solutions here? You know, or
so
you know,
like, in his heart, I'm
who could have told her, and because like we know that somebody told her. That's a fact. Okay.
So I guess if he said it out loud, a servant could have heard him and told her, but that's not when he says it in his heart, that doesn't suggest that.
Yeah.
Either the biblical God who could see into his heart, and told her.
Yeah, because again, well, that's a question that we've already kind of established that God doesn't. But you know, so maybe God. We know that God spoke to her before, when the two boys were in her stomach. So perhaps God told her, but I'd assume that the author would mention whenever God speaks. Okay, but maybe. Okay, but also the question is, how would God know? We've already seen God not knowing. But that's one option, perhaps. What else?
She could have been told from some other servants or someone in the household that Esau looked like he was going to go after Jacob, or she could have just seen that herself and insinuated it. But he says that. Yeah.
So it says Esau's words were told to him.
Yeah,
to her. Yeah. So I agree. I when I was kind of thinking about this and writing this up, maybe it was her understanding of human nature. You know, that she could see the seething anger, but it doesn't say that she knew or she comprehended. It says his words were told to her. Okay, so somebody had to know what Esau said in his heart.
It could be Isaac. Is it knowing his son Esau told her something?
No, because
that would be inconsistent with what we've seen from Isaac so far.
Yeah. Well, inconsistent, but also, if that were the case, then she can say, "Okay, let's send away Jacob."
Right. Yeah. Then
she keeps it. She keeps this from Isaac, so Isaac doesn't know.
And the same. I mean, it couldn't be Jacob either, because Jacob would know that he had to take off.
Yeah. So the only other option is like you said, some servant, but it would mean that Esau didn't just say it in his heart, that he actually verbalized it. He told somebody of his plan. And so the question, again, like I said, it's a minor issue, but it, it calls out literarily as a problem, because it happens right after the other. He said in his heart, and then his words were told to her. Okay, so it could be said in his heart in the Hebrew, or how it's translated in English. He said to himself, right? That's what you said. Said to himself.
Yeah, I have it that he said to himself.
Yeah. So the question, even in our English, if I say, John said to himself, I will make the dean's list. Okay, does that mean that, you know, when I said John said to himself, does that indicate to any listener that John also kept it to himself, or does it mean that John had a commitment to make the dean's list? I'm going to make the dean's list. It very well could be that after that, as part of this commitment, I'm telling my parents, or I'm telling my class, I'm going to work hard and make the dean's list. Okay, so saying something to myself, or saying it in my heart, could mean I kept a secret. I had a secret that I didn't tell others. But it could also simply mean I mean to do this. Okay, so perhaps said in his heart meant he was had this conviction. He meant to kill Jacob. Okay, so it very well might be that Esau shared his plan, shared his intention. Basically, said to himself is not vocalized, but he articulated in his own mind an intention to do X or Y. Okay, so he might have shared this intention with somebody in the household, and that person told Rebecca. Okay, so it might, because a lot has been made of this. Okay, about God intervening, God telling her, because it's so odd. Okay, but it might simply be a turn of phrase in the same way that we use that term, said in his heart or said to himself, many times without trying to indicate that it's a secret. It's simply an intention. So okay, so we might not need to make as much of this as sometimes is made of it. What?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the Torah tells us that Jacob resents being the younger brother. Okay, he's okay. How do you see that?
Jacob and Esau.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jacob is portrayed as the younger brother and as being like at home while Esau's out like hunting, and like Esau's the macho older brother, and Jacob is the like homebound younger brother who doesn't really go off, and it's kind of how.
Yeah, but what I mean is, where do you see resentment? Or jealousy.
When Esau comes back, I guess Isaac, when he tricks him out of his birthright. When Isaac tricks Esau out of his birthright after
Jacob, yeah, but
sorry, Jacob.
Yeah. What incident are you referring to?
He come back and then he said, "I'll give you anything."